Welcome back to part 2. Here we're going to be looking at some practical and ethical challenges with implementing LLMs and generative AI, as well as some potential impacts on organizations. The complexity of these LLMs grows exponentially. Each version is increasingly complex, adding layers and an incalculably huge number of parameters. GPT-4, which is based on training data through April of 2023, is presumed to have nearly 1.8 trillion parameters, over 10x the parameters of the prior version. All this complexity has a cost. Although computer scientists understand the architecture and the high-level processes and steps LLMs are executing, we really don't understand at a more detailed level how the system actually works to produce content. That is, we don't know what's happening inside the machine. This is called the black box problem. To illustrate, an academic paper was published recently on how ChatGPT-2, an earlier version of ChatGPT, was able to predict that the word Mary, instead of the word John, was the next word to complete the sentence. When Mary and John went to the store, John gave a drink to Mary. Researchers wanted to understand what the system was actually doing to calculate an attention score that resulted in predicting the word Mary for the feed-forward step. To unpack this seemingly simple single-word prediction required a complex analysis in the form of a 25-page academic paper. Think about that for a moment. ChatGPT can write computer programs, design websites, score in the top decile or quintile on standardized tests, and although humans designed it, humans no longer know how the system executes its instructions. The level of complexity at which these systems operate is now beyond human scrutiny and analysis. Despite the exponentially increasing complexity of these models, bigger is better, leading to a kind of AI arms race. The CEO of Alphabet has already gone on record saying he thinks AI is more profound to humanity than electricity or fire. But what are the implications? Aren't there ethical considerations given how powerful the technology is on the one hand, while on the other hand, we don't fully understand how it works? This is Geoffrey Hinton. He's a cognitive psychologist and a computer scientist widely known as the godfather of AI because of a paper he co-authored in 1986 that set the stage for deep learning and neural networks that are now foundational to LLMs and generative AI. From 2013 to 2023, he split his time between his professor role at the University of Toronto and his lab at Google, where he was a chief scientist working on Google Brain, their strategic AI initiative. Here's what he has to say about the current state of AI.
He's the computer scientist who's known as the godfather of AI. So what does he know that we don't?
I can't see a path that guarantees safety. We're entering a period of great uncertainty where we're dealing with things we've never dealt with before, and we can't afford to get it wrong with these things.
Can't afford to get it wrong, why?
Well, because they might take over.
This is one of the reasons why Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, has called for government regulation. Do you agree with Hinton? Altman? Why or why not? To oversimplify a bit, there are two levels of this debate about the dangers of AI. First is the question of whether a general AI can ever be conscious or sentient. If so, could it ever take over if it were threatened? This is the apocalyptic scenario that's the backstory of dystopian sci-fi films like Terminator and Matrix. Second, even if we assume AI can never be conscious or sentient, which is a philosophical question, can it still pose potential danger, even without intention or awareness? Imagine for a moment an AI whose goal is to maximize the number of paper clips in the world. What would a program like that do if it learned human beings impaired its goal? What about potential devious uses of AI by ill-intended human actors? This captures Hinton's concerns. He's afraid of the possibility that an AI could create sub-goals that would be incompatible with its original programming and therefore outside our control. You don't need to believe an AI can ever be conscious to see the nascent risks of the technology. Because of their extreme complexity in the black box problem, AI models can be fragile and can end up behaving in unpredictable ways. Recently, ChatGPT went off the rails and began providing nonsensical responses in Spanglish for some queries. Here's an example of an actual response generated for an architect who posted these responses on X. Quote, sometimes in the creative process of keeping the intertwined Spanglish vibrant, the cogs and la tecla might get a bit whimsical. Muchas gracias for your understanding. Y Alan, sure, we're being as crystal clear como lo from now on. A little bit of French added in there as well. In response to a follow-up query, the chatbot responded with, would it glad your click used to grape turn tooth over a mind ocean jello type? Other similar whimsical and nonsensical responses were discussed on Reddit. Now, OpenAI soon acknowledged the problem without revealing the cause. Some experts speculated the errors were caused by corrupted attention scores, that is, the vector weights that account for the context in which a word appears and that are calculated at the attention step. Without revealing the source of the error, OpenAI was able to fix the problem later that week. Now, imagine relying on a mission-critical AI system that goes off the rails like this. Taking a step back from the Skynet, Terminator, Matrix, machine war, apocalypse scenario for a moment, and the potential fragility of such a complex system, there's another limitation of LLMs and generative AI models. They're based on their training data, and this is a constraint. So if the model's training data are biased, so are the model's outputs. As illustrated in an MIT summit on AI, a Brown University computer scientist, Dr. Eli Pavlik, asked an image generator to produce an image of a surgeon, and it produced a homogeneous set of white males, which is not representative of how surgeons actually look in the real world today. The old principle, garbage in, garbage out, applies because the training data set for this query was itself biased. Now imagine using a biased system like this for hiring and selection. The biases could impact the quality and diversity of your applicant pool. Soon, after ChatGPT came out, I began playing with it to do literature reviews and summaries of topics and organizational behavior, and I quickly discovered that, like Google Bard example we just saw and started with, ChatGPT made stuff up. Beyond factual errors, it fabricated sources, even going so far as to create properly formatted APA citations of non-existent articles published in non-existent journals. Some of you may have had similar experiences. These kind of fabricated results are called hallucinations because they're completely detached from reality, yet they're very real. You can't trust everything an LLM generates. Ultimately, LLMs and generative AI models can only be as good as the data sets used to train them. In response to biased responses from image generators, like the surgeon example we just saw, Google recently rolled out its most advanced text-to-image model, Gemini. With Gemini, Google was trying to fix biased responses by generating a more demographically diverse set of outputs. In principle, this was well intended. In practice, however, Gemini lacked the common sense of an actual person. For example, when asked to generate images of a German soldier in 1943, it generated these nonsensical, arguably offensive images. Other similar anachronistic and bizarre images were generated for other queries, such as indigenous Americans in colonial outfits or black people in Viking garb. Alphabet stock took a little hit when this news came out, but not the $100 billion knee-jerk response that we started with when these models first became public. Microsoft's Copilot is dealing with similar problems, with a lead programmer recently blowing the whistle to Congress that he does not think the software is safe enough for public consumption because of unpredictable, even offensive images being generated in response to otherwise harmless queries. The bottom line is there's still work to do to make these models bias-free, if that's ever possible. Shortcomings aside, CIOs are all in on AI. Radical changes in how enterprises operate and interact with customers are being tested and implemented. Deloitte recently surveyed over 2,600 global business leaders across 13 countries and found 12 top use cases for AI across the enterprise. A few examples in bold include discriminatory pricing that enables firms to charge what different customer segments might be willing to pay, predictive maintenance, similar to what GE tried to do with jet engines and power systems, customer personalization. These three, by the way, would be strategically aligned. Automation of routine and repetitive processes and tasks, such as financial reporting and accounting, and improved safety and quality monitoring and compliance. If we map these roughly to each of the S's in the 7S model, the highest impacts probably are going to be on systems, skills, and staffing, because these technologies have the most profound implications on enterprise processes and an organization's core competencies, which has implications for the firm's hiring mix. The implication here is AI will have a big impact on employment well into the future. The nature of that employment impact is up for debate. Will Robots Take My Job is a project that integrates crowdsourcing with Bureau of Labor Statistics ONET data to track public sentiment on AI's potential impact on employment. The highlighted line displays the risk level of job loss for managerial roles. As you can see, perceived risk jumped up for some roles, yet not others, when ChatGPT-3 was first introduced. Management risk is moderate to low compared to others, with office and administrative support being at highest risk. I encourage you to check out willrobotstakemyjob.com for yourself and, play around with the website a little bit. Another view is to look at sectors and functional roles across the economy in terms of total employment and to compare them across risk levels. Again, management, highlighted here with the box, is in the lower to minimal risk category. Presumably, this is because managers need to interact effectively with others and make decisions. The most eminent and high risks, again, are seen with office and administrative personnel, as well as transportation and logistics, food prep and service, and even sales and related positions. That's where those personalization and cloud pricing optimization use cases come in. It's clear that AI, especially LLMs and generative AI, will be a great destroyer of some jobs, but will also create new opportunities for new roles. Some early research on the impact of generative AI suggests it may even be able to boost our creativity and innovation if we use it effectively for idea generation. Now, we've introduced large language models and generative AI more broadly, hopefully providing a quick peek under the hood of these technologies. We've also looked at some of the shortcomings of these technologies, ethical risks, and potential economic impacts in terms of possible uses across the enterprise and public perceptions of how these technologies could impact the future of work. I'd like to finish up with some closing questions for you to ponder. Specifically, given what you've seen, what do you think are the potential use cases for generative AI, including technologies such as ChatGPT? What risks do you feel are inherent to these technologies, including ethical risks? How should organizations manage these risks, and who should ensure the responsible use of these technologies? Finally, how can your own organization leverage these technologies in ways that enhance performance?